Captain Lee Hana stood on the bridge of her ship and looked out at the stars. She had been traveling through space for many months now. Her ship was called the Mugungwa, and it was the first human ship to travel this far from Earth. The mission was very important because humans had never met aliens before. Hana was a strong woman who had served in the Earth military for 15 years. She had short black hair and serious eyes that missed nothing. Her crew trusted her completely because she had never failed a mission before. Today she wore her best uniform because they were going to meet aliens for the first time. Her pilot, Kim Day, sat at the controls of the ship. He was a young man with quick hands and a good sense of humor. Even though he joked a lot, Kim was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. He had flown through dangerous asteroid fields and never crashed once. Hana knew she could count on him. Park Min-ho worked as the ship's engineer. He was a quiet man who understood machines better than most people understood other humans. His tools were always clean, and his engines always ran perfectly. When something broke on the ship, Park could fix it in minutes. He rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. The ship's doctor was Choi Yuna. She had kind eyes and gentle hands that could heal almost any injury. Yuna had studied medicine on 3 different planets before joining the crew. She carried a medical bag everywhere and worried about everyone like they were her own family. The ship flew toward a system with 2 suns. The planets there glowed with red and orange light that looked beautiful but also dangerous. According to their information, this was where the Nexari Empire lived. The Nexari were supposed to be very strong fighters who had conquered many worlds. Hana had read all the reports about the Nexari. They were tall aliens with 4 arms and skin like scales. Their warriors were famous across the galaxy for never losing a fight. The most famous Nexari fighters were twin brothers named Korvac and Zorvac. These twins had defeated the armies of 17 different planets. The human government had sent Hana to make peace with the Nexari. They hoped to trade with them and learn from them, but the reports worried Hana because the Nexari seemed to only respect strength. They had made slaves of every weak species they met. As their ship got closer to the Nexari planets, huge alien ships appeared around them. The Nexari ships were 3 times bigger than the human ship and covered with weapons that could destroy cities. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, like a dance of death. Kim looked at his instruments and frowned. The alien ships were scanning their vessel with energy beams. That made the hull vibrate. He had never seen technology like this before. The scanners were so powerful they could probably count every bolt in their ship. A voice came over the radio, but it was not speaking any human language. The words sounded like growling mixed with clicking sounds. Luckily, the humans had brought a translation computer that could understand most alien languages. After a few minutes, the computer began to translate the alien words. The voice said, "Welcome, weak creatures, from the small blue world. We are surprised you made it this far without dying. Your ship looks like it might fall apart at any moment." Hana took the microphone and spoke clearly. "This is Captain Lee, Hana of the Earth ship Mugungwa. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade with the mighty Nexari Empire." The alien voice laughed, and the sound was not friendly at all. "Friendship," the voice said. "The Nexari do not have friends. We have only servants and enemies. You will come to our flagship and meet our champions. If they like you, perhaps you will live." More alien ships surrounded the human vessel until they could not see empty space in any direction. The ships were all different sizes, but they all had the same angry red color. Their weapons pointed at the small human ship like the fangs of hungry beasts. Park checked his instruments and reported that the alien ships were more advanced than anything humans had ever built. Their engines produced more power, their weapons were stronger, and their armor was thicker. It seemed impossible that humans could fight such technology. Yuna prepared her medical supplies because she expected someone might get hurt during the meeting. She had medicines that worked on humans, but she did not know if they would help with alien injuries. She hoped there would be no fighting, but she wanted to be ready. The biggest alien ship was larger than a human city. It had thousands of windows that glowed with red light and weapons that could destroy planets. The ship looked like a giant metal beast floating in space with teeth made of energy. Cannons. A beam of light shot out from the big ship and grabbed their vessel. The human ship began moving toward the alien vessel, even though Kim was not controlling it. The alien tractor beam was so strong that their engines could not break free. Hana told her crew to prepare for boarding. She checked her weapons and made sure her uniform looked perfect. First impressions were very important when meeting new species. She had studied alien customs for months and knew that the Nexari respected courage above all else. As they got closer to the huge ship, they could see that it was even more impressive than it looked from far away. The hull was covered with symbols that probably told stories of great battles. The ship had been built for war, not exploration. An opening appeared in the side of the alien ship, and their vessel was pulled inside. The docking bay was enormous, with hundreds of alien fighters parked in rows. Each fighter looked deadly enough to destroy their entire ship. Alien creatures moved around the docking bay wearing armor and carrying weapons. They looked exactly like the reports had described them, tall with 4 arms and skin like reptiles. Their eyes glowed with red light, and their teeth were sharp like knives. The aliens gathered around the human ship as it landed. They pointed at the vessel and made sounds that the translator said were mocking laughter. They seemed to think the human ship was a joke compared to their advanced technology. Hana straightened her uniform and checked her weapons one more time. She knew that the next few hours would determine the future of Earth. If she failed, humanity might become slaves. If she succeeded, they would have powerful new allies. The airlock opened and alien air flowed into their ship. It smelled like metal and ozone, but the computer said it was safe to breathe. Hana stepped forward, ready to meet the most dangerous aliens in the galaxy. She had no idea that within hours she would be fighting for her life against the most feared warriors in the universe. But she was ready for whatever came next because she was human, and humans never gave up without a fight. The adventure was about to begin, and Captain Lee Hana would soon show the galaxy what Earth women could do when they were pushed too far. The aliens thought humans were weak, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. Hana walked through the corridors of the alien ship with her team behind her. The walls were covered with pictures of battles and conquests that made her stomach turn. Every image showed Nexari warriors standing over defeated enemies from different planets. Jiho walked beside her carrying the translation device. He was nervous because he had never been this close to dangerous aliens before, but he was the best translator Earth had, and Hana needed him to understand every word the aliens spoke. Soman followed behind them as the security chief. She was a tough woman who had fought in many battles on Earth. Her hand stayed near her weapon, but she knew it would probably be useless against alien technology. Still, she was ready to protect her captain no matter what happened. The alien corridors were huge because the Nexari were much taller than humans. Everything was built for creatures with 4 arms and reptile skin. The ceiling was so high that humans looked like children walking through the halls. They passed many alien warriors who stopped to stare at the humans. The aliens whispered to each other and pointed at the small Earth people. Some of them laughed like they were looking at funny animals in a zoo. The meeting hall was bigger than any building Hana had ever seen. Thousands of aliens filled the seats looking down at a central platform where the humans would have to stand. The noise of alien voices was overwhelming, even with the translator working. At the front of the hall sat 2 identical aliens who were clearly the leaders. These had to be the famous twins, Korvac and Zorvac, that all the reports talked about. They were bigger than the other Nexari and covered with scars from old battles. The twins looked exactly the same except for their scars. One had a long scar across his face, while the other had claw marks on his chest. Both of them had 4 muscular arms and eyes that glowed like red flames. Their teeth were sharp enough to bite through metal. When the humans entered the hall, all the alien voices stopped talking. The silence was scary because thousands of creatures were staring at them. The twins stood up at the same time, and their movement was perfectly synchronized. Korvac and Zorvac spoke at the same time, using the same words in the same voice. It was creepy, hearing 2 voices say exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. The translator struggled to keep up with their strange way of speaking. "So these are the creatures from the blue world," they said together. "We have heard that your species thinks it is intelligent, but you look no stronger than the plant creatures we conquered last year." The crowd of aliens laughed at this joke, and the sound echoed through the huge hall. Hana kept her face calm even though she was angry about being insulted. She had to stay diplomatic no matter what they said. "Your ships are small and weak," the twins continued. "Your weapons are primitive and your bodies look fragile. We are curious how you even survived long enough to develop space travel." More laughter filled the hall as aliens pointed at the humans and made jokes in their own language. The translator picked up words like tiny and pathetic and breakable. Hana stepped forward and spoke clearly. "We may be smaller than you, but humans have survived on a dangerous planet for millions of years. We have fought wars, learned from mistakes, and grown stronger through every challenge." The twins tilted their heads like they were looking at something strange. One of them said, "But you have no claws, no thick skin, no natural weapons. How did you defeat the predators on your world by using our minds?" Hana replied. "We created tools, built weapons, and worked together. Humans may not be the strongest, but we are very good at solving problems." This made the twins laugh even louder. They spoke together again, saying, "Minds are useless when facing real warriors. We have conquered 17 worlds and defeated every champion sent against us. No species has ever matched our combat skills." Hana watched the twins carefully as they spoke. She noticed something interesting about how they moved. When one twin raised his left arm, the other raised his right arm at exactly the same time. When one stepped forward, the other stepped back. They were like mirror images of each other. This gave Hana an idea. The twins were so used to fighting together that they might have trouble fighting separately. Their greatest strength might also be a weakness, if someone could figure out how to use it against them. The leader of the crowd was an old alien with many scars who seemed to be some kind of judge. He spoke in a voice that sounded tired from years of war. "Your species may speak of intelligence, but in this galaxy, only strength matters. If you wish to trade with the Nexari Empire, your champions must prove themselves worthy in combat. This is how we have always determined who deserves respect and who becomes our slaves." Hana felt her heart beat faster because she knew what was coming next. The twins stood up and spoke together again. "We challenge your champions to single combat. If you win, you earn the right to trade with us. If you lose, your planet becomes part of our empire." The crowd cheered and stamped their feet, making noise like thunder. The aliens were excited because they expected to see another easy victory for their unbeatable champions. Ojiho whispered to Hana, asking if she wanted him to try to negotiate different terms. But Hana knew there was no other choice. The Nexari only respected strength, and they would never accept humans as equals without proof limb. Soman stepped forward, ready to volunteer as Earth champion. She was the security chief and the best fighter on the human team. But Hana put a hand on her shoulder to stop her. "I accept the challenge," Hana said clearly. The words echoed through the hall and caused a moment of surprised silence. Then the aliens began laughing harder than ever. The crowd thought it was hilarious that a small human female would challenge the mighty twins. Some aliens fell out of their seats laughing, while others pointed and made jokes. The twins themselves seemed confused by this unexpected turn of events. Even Han's own team looked worried. Kim Dae had followed them to the meeting and his face showed concern. Park Min-ho frowned like he was trying to solve a difficult equation. Yuna looked ready to start treating injuries. But Hana had made her decision. She had studied the twins, and she thought she understood their weakness. They were used to winning through perfect coordination, but what would happen if someone disrupted that coordination? The old judge alien stood up and called for silence. When the crowd stopped laughing, he spoke in his tired voice. "Very well, human female. The combat will take place in 1 hour. Prepare yourself for battle." The twins spoke together one last time, saying, "We will try to make your death quick since you showed courage. By accepting our challenge, it has been a long time since we fought someone so weak." Hana smiled and said quietly, "We will see who is really weak as." The humans were escorted to a preparation room. Hana began planning her strategy. She knew she would have to fight smarter, not stronger, if she wanted to save her planet from slavery. The battle ahead would test every skill she had learned in 15 years of military service. The fate of Earth now rested in her hands, and she was ready to show the galaxy what human determination could accomplish. The combat arena was like nothing Hana had ever seen before. The room was perfectly circular and larger than a football stadium. The floor was made of metal that reflected the lights from above like a dark mirror. Floating platforms hung in the air, at different heights connected by energy bridges that glowed blue and purple. Some platforms rotated slowly, while others moved up and down in patterns that would make fighting very difficult. Energy barriers flickered on and off around the arena, creating walls that could appear and disappear without warning. The whole room was designed to test a warrior in every possible way, with obstacles that changed constantly. Thousands of aliens filled the viewing galleries that surrounded the arena. Their excited voices created a noise like a storm as they waited to see the human female get defeated by their unbeatable champions. Hana stood at one entrance to the arena wearing her simple Earth military uniform. She had refused the fancy alien armor they offered because she wanted to fight with equipment. She understood her weapons were basic human guns that used metal bullets instead of fancy energy beams. The twins entered from the opposite side wearing ceremonial armor that sparkled with energy. The armor covered their forearms and reptile skin, making them look even more dangerous than before. Their helmets had decorations that showed all the worlds they had conquered. Korvac and Zorvac carried plasma weapons that hummed with deadly power. These weapons could cut through the hull of a spaceship or melt stone walls. The energy they contained made the air around them shimmer with heat. The twins began their traditional war ritual, moving in perfect synchronization as they had done before every battle for 20 years. They raised their weapons above their heads and roared together, making a sound that shook the arena. Energy crackled around their plasma weapons, creating lightning that danced between their forearms. The display was meant to terrify enemies and make them give up before the fighting even started. The crowd of aliens cheered and screamed approval as their champions showed off their power. Some aliens threw objects into the arena while others chanted war songs in their harsh language. Kim Dae sat in the human viewing section looking very worried. He whispered to Park Min-ho that maybe they should have brought bigger guns. Park whispered back that bigger guns would not help against enemies who could melt metal with their bare hands. Choi Yuna watched Hana carefully and noticed something that the others missed. The captain looked completely calm, like she was getting ready for a training exercise instead of a fight to the death. Her breathing was steady and her hands were relaxed. The old judge alien stood up in his special viewing box and raised his arms for silence. When the crowd stopped cheering, he spoke in his tired voice that echoed through the arena. "The combat will begin when the signal sounds," he announced. "The rules are simple. Fight until one side cannot continue. The winner takes all, and the loser faces the consequences. A deep horn sounded across the arena, and the battle began immediately. The twins moved forward in their famous fighting formation that had never been defeated in hundreds of battles. They separated just enough to attack from two different angles while staying close enough to support each other. Korvac went high, jumping onto a floating platform, while Zorvac stayed low, running along the arena floor. Their plasma weapons fired at the same time, sending deadly energy beams toward the spot where Hana had been standing, but she was no longer there because she had rolled behind a metal barrier of a Tay. Instant! The horn sounded. The energy beams hit the barrier and melted it like butter, but Hana was already moving to a new position. She had studied the arena layout during the preparation hour and knew exactly where every obstacle and platform was. Located, Zorvac leaped over the melted barrier, expecting to find a cowering human, but instead found empty space. Hana had predicted his move and was now behind him on a different platform. She fired her simple human weapon at his back, but the bullet bounced off his armor without doing any damage. The twins laughed at her weak attack and began moving in their practiced pattern again. Korvac jumped down from above, while Zorvac swept around from the side. They moved like dancers who had performed the same routine thousands of times. Their coordination was so perfect, it looked like magic. But Hana was not trying to match their strength or their technology. She was fighting a completely different kind of battle using tactics they had never seen before. Instead of standing still and trading shots, she kept moving constantly. When they attacked high, she went low. When they moved left, she went right. She used the arena obstacles in ways they had not expected, turning their own battleground against them. The energy barriers that were meant to make fighting harder became Hana cover. She timed their appearance, perfectly ducking behind them, just as the plasma weapons fired. The barriers absorbed the deadly energy while she moved to safety, the Saru. Floating platforms that were supposed to create confusion became Han's stepping stones. She jumped from one to another, staying ahead of the twins' attacks while they struggled to follow her unpredictable movements. For the first time in their lives, the twins found themselves chasing an enemy instead of cornering one. Hana's fighting style was nothing like what they had faced before. She did not rely on strength or advanced weapons. Instead, she used her mind to analyze their patterns and predict their moves. Every time they thought they had her trapped, she was already somewhere else. The crowd began to murmur in confusion because this was not how battles usually went. The twins tried to adjust their tactics, but they had been fighting the same way for so long that change was difficult. When Korvac tried to do something different, Zorvac was not ready for it, and their perfect coordination began to crack. Hana noticed the moment when their synchronization faltered, and she immediately took advantage of it. She fired at Korvac's feet, making him stumble just as Zorvac was expecting him to jump. This threw off their timing completely. For the first time in hundreds of battles, the twins were not moving in perfect harmony. They tried to get back into their rhythm, but Hana kept disrupting their attempts with unexpected attacks and movements. The crowd fell silent as they watched something impossible happening. The unbeatable champions were struggling against a single human female, who should have been defeated in the first few seconds of the battle. Some aliens leaned forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were seeing. Others whispered to each other, wondering if this was some kind of trick or illusion, but it was no trick. It was simply human intelligence being used in a way the aliens had never encountered before. Hana was not trying to overpower her enemies. She was trying to outsmart them. The battle was just beginning, and already the twins were learning that their greatest strength might become their greatest weakness if they faced an opponent who understood how to exploit it. The arena echoed with the sound of weapons firing and platforms moving, but underneath it all was a new sound, the sound of doubt creeping into the minds of creatures who had never known defeat. The battle had been going for 10 minutes, and the twins were beginning to feel something they had never experienced before. Frustration crept into their movements, As Hana continued to avoid their attacks in ways that seemed impossible, Hana rolled under a spinning platform just as plasma fire burned the air where her head had been. She came up running and fired 3 quick shots at a control panel near the ceiling. Her bullets hit exactly where she aimed. Sparks flew from the damaged panel, and suddenly the gravity in part of the arena changed. The floating platforms began moving differently, throwing off the twins. Careful timing. They had trained in normal gravity, but this was something new. Korvac found himself floating upward when he expected to land on solid ground. His 4 arms waved helplessly as he tried to control his movement. Zorvac looked up in confusion. Because his twin was supposed to be attacking from below, Hana used the gravity change to leap higher than any human should be able to jump. She bounded from platform to platform like she was flying while the twins struggled to adapt to the new conditions. The crowd gasped as they watched the small human female do things that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Some aliens stood up in their seats, pointing and shouting in their own languages. Park Min-ho smiled from the human viewing section, finally understanding what his captain was doing. She was not just fighting the twins. She was fighting the entire arena. Using every system against itself, Hana landed on a platform near another control panel and quickly examined the alien writing. Her studies of Nexari technology during the long space journey now paid off. She could read enough to understand the basic functions. She shot at specific points on the panel, causing energy overloads in the arena lighting system. The red battle lights began flashing in random patterns, creating confusion and temporary blindness for anyone looking directly at them. The twins roared in anger because their perfect vision was being disrupted by the flashing lights. They had fought in many different conditions, but never against an enemy who changed the battlefield itself. During combat, Zorvac fired wildly at the flashing lights, trying to stop them, but his plasma bolts only created more damage and more chaos. Energy feedback ran through the arena systems, causing more panels to spark and malfunction. Now Hana had multiple sources of distraction working in her favor: the changed gravity, the flashing lights, and the system malfunctions all combined to create an environment that favored quick thinking over brute strength. She noticed something else about the twins that gave her another advantage. Their armor was connected by communication systems that helped them coordinate their movements, but those same systems could be disrupted. Hana fired at a relay antenna on Korvac's armor. The small device sparked and went dead. Suddenly, the twin could not hear his brother's thoughts as clearly as before. Their mental connection became fuzzy and uncertain. For 20 years, the twins had shared every thought and sensation through their armor link. They knew what the other was thinking before he thought it. But now that connection was damaged. Korvac tried to signal his brother with hand gestures, but the flashing lights made it hard to see clearly. Zorvac attempted to move into formation, but without their mental link, he guessed wrong about his twins' intentions. They bumped into each other for the first time in years of fighting together. The collision sent them both stumbling and gave Hana the opening she needed. She fired at Zorvac's armor antenna as well, cutting off their communication completely now. The twins were truly fighting as individuals instead of as a single unit with 2 bodies. They had never learned to be independent warriors because they had never needed to be. Their perfect partnership had always been enough. The crowd began to murmur louder as they realized something incredible was happening. The human female was not just surviving against their champions, she was actually gaining the advantage. Some aliens started making bets on how long the fight would continue. Others argued about whether this was really happening or if they were seeing some kind of illusion, but Yuna in the human section knew this was real. She had seen Hana train and study for months, preparing for every possible scenario the captain had planned. For exactly this kind of situation, Hana jumped between 2 moving platforms and landed near the arena main power coupling. The system controlled the energy barriers that appeared and disappeared throughout the fighting space. She studied the coupling. quickly looking for the right connections. Her engineering training helped her understand how the alien technology worked, even though it was more advanced than human systems. With careful shots, she damaged specific parts of the coupling, causing the energy barriers to activate in new patterns. Instead of protecting both sides equally, the barriers now formed walls that favored her position. The twins found themselves separated by energy walls that they could not break through. Their plasma weapons were powerful, but the barriers were designed to absorb that kind of energy. Korvac was trapped on one side of the arena, while Zorvac was isolated on the other. For the first time in their lives, they were fighting completely alone without their twin nearby for support. Panic began to show in their movements as they realized how much they had always depended on each other. Neither twin had ever made a tactical decision without consulting his brother first. Hana moved through the maze of energy barriers like she had designed it herself. She had memorized the pattern changes and could predict where new walls would appear. This gave her safe paths that the twins could not follow. The battle had completely changed from what anyone expected. Instead of two champions overwhelming a weak enemy, it had become a chess game, where the human female was always 3 moves ahead. Korvac tried to break through a barrier by overloading his weapon, but the energy feedback burned out his left arm cannon. He now had only 3 working weapons, while Hana still had all of hers. Zorvac attempted to jump over the barriers, but Hana shot at the platform he was aiming for. The damaged platform collapsed, sending him falling toward the arena floor. He landed hard and his armor cracked. For the first time in the battle, the twins looked vulnerable. Their perfect armor was damaged, their communication was broken, and they were separated from each other. The crowd had gone completely silent as they watched their unbeatable champions struggle against impossible odds. Many aliens could not believe what they were seeing, but Hana was just getting started. She had identified every weakness in their fighting style, every flaw in their coordination, and every vulnerability in their technology. Now came the most dangerous part of her plan. She had to finish the fight before the twins could adapt to fighting as individuals instead of as a perfect team. The arena around them continued to malfunction and change as Han's modifications took full effect. The battlefield had become her weapon, and she was about to show the galaxy what human ingenuity could accomplish. The moment Hana had been waiting for finally arrived. The twins were separated, confused, and fighting as individuals for the first time in their lives. She had spent the entire battle preparing for this exact situation. Hana sprinted across a stable platform toward the center of the arena where the main control system was located. If she could reach it, she could end the fight in a way that no one would expect. Korvac saw her running and tried to intercept her, but an energy barrier appeared between them at exactly the wrong moment. He slammed into the wall and bounced back, stunned by the impact. Zorvac fired at Hana from his position, but his shots went wide because he was not used to aiming without his brother's guidance. Their shared targeting system had always made them perfect shots together. The central control system was a massive column covered with alien writing and blinking lights. It controlled every function of the arena, from gravity to energy barriers to the floating platforms. Hana reached the column and quickly found what she was looking for: the power distribution network that fed energy to the twins' armor systems. She had noticed the connections during her earlier sabotage. She aimed carefully and fired at specific junction points on the column. Sparks flew as the alien circuits overloaded and began feeding too much power into the armor communication systems. The twins' armor, which had been damaged by her earlier attacks, could not handle the power surge. The systems that were supposed to help them coordinate began to work against them instead. Korvac felt his armor lock up as the servos froze in place. His forearms became trapped in whatever position they were in when the overload hit. He could barely move, and his weapons would not respond. Zorvac experienced the opposite problem. His armor began moving on its own, trying to execute combat maneuvers from its memory banks. But without his twin there to coordinate, the movements were all wrong. The crowd watched in amazement as the mighty champions struggled with their own equipment. The armor that had made them invincible was now making them helpless. Hana stood in the center of the arena between the two trapped aliens. She could have finished them easily with her weapons, but instead she did something that shocked everyone present. She set down her guns and walked toward Korvac with her hands empty. The alien warrior was struggling to move in his frozen armor, but he could still speak. Why, the twin asked through his translator, "Why do you not kill me? When you have the chance, every other species would have ended this by now, because humans prefer to make friends instead of corpses." Hana replied clearly, so that her translator would carry her words to the entire crowd. "We are stronger when we work together than when we fight alone." She reached Korvac's armor and began examining the frozen joints. Her engineering knowledge helped her understand how the alien technology worked. She found the manual releases and began freeing his arms. The crowd erupted in confused voices as they watched the human female help her defeated enemy. Some aliens shouted that this was against all traditions, while others demanded to know what was happening. Hana finished freeing Korvac and walked over to Zorvac, whose armor was still moving randomly. His systems were stuck in a combat loop trying to fight an enemy that was no longer there. She found the emergency shutdown controls on his armor and began the process of safely powering down his systems. The random movement stopped and Zorvac could finally control his own body again. Both twins stood free of their malfunctioning armor, looking at the human female who had defeated them so completely, yet chosen not to destroy them. They had never experienced mercy from a victor before. "This makes no sense," Zorvac said. "We attacked your people, threatened your world, and tried to kill you. Why do you help us now?" Hana smiled and said, "Because you were brave enough to fight fairly, and you accepted defeat with honor. Those are qualities that humans respect even in enemies." The old Judge alien in his viewing box stood up slowly. He had watched thousands of battles, but nothing like this had ever happened before. The traditional ending was always death or complete surrender. The judge spoke in his tired voice, addressing the entire crowd. "This battle is unlike any in our history. The human female has defeated our champions through intelligence, and skill then showed mercy that we have never seen." He paused and looked directly at Hana before continuing. "The victor has proven that her species possesses not only tactical ability, but also wisdom and compassion. These are rare qualities in the Galaxy." Korvac and Zorvac looked at each other for the first time as separate individuals instead of parts of a single fighting unit. They realized they had learned something important about strength and cooperation. "We have been wrong about many things," Korvac said to Hana. "We thought strength came only from fighting and winning, but you have shown us that it can also come from choosing not to destroy." Zorvac nodded and added, "We spent our lives conquering worlds and making enemies, but you turned your enemies into something else. What do humans call those who fight beside you? Allies?" Hana answered. "Friends who choose to work together instead of against each other." The twins looked at the thousands of aliens in the viewing galleries. Many of those species had been conquered by the Nexari and forced to serve as slaves. They had won through fear and violence, but Hana had won through intelligence, mercy, and the offer of friendship. Her victory opened up possibilities that the Nexari had never considered. The judge raised his arms for silence and made an announcement that would change the course of galactic history. "The human female has won the right to speak for her species in all Nexari territory. More than that," the judge continued, "she has earned something that no being has ever achieved before, the respect and friendship of our greatest warriors." The crowd began to cheer, but it was a different kind of sound than before. Instead of the bloodthirsty roar they had made at the Beginning it was the sound of beings discovering new possibilities. Kim Dae jumped up in the human section and shouted with joy. Park Min-ho smiled widely while Yuna wiped tears from her eyes. Their captain had not only saved Earth, but had done something much more important. She had shown the galaxy that humans were not just another species to be conquered or ignored. They were potential partners who could bring new ideas and new ways of thinking to old problems. The twins approached Hana and For. The first time in 20 years they spoke separately. Instead of in unison, Korvac said, "We would be honored to learn from you." "And your people," Zorvac added. "And we hope that our people can become friends with yours." Hana smiled and replied, "I think that would be the beginning of something wonderful for both our species." The battle was over, but the real victory was just beginning. 3 days after the historic battle, the atmosphere aboard the Nexari flagship had completely changed. The corridors that once echoed with the sounds of conquest now buzzed with excited conversations about cooperation and friendship. Hana walked through the ship with Korvac and Zorvac beside her. The twins no longer wore their intimidating battle armor. Instead, they dressed in simple diplomatic robes that made them look more like scholars than warriors. The other aliens they passed showed respect instead of fear. Many species that had been conquered by the Nexari were now free to speak their minds. They talked openly about their hopes for a better future. Ojiho had been busy translating conversations between humans and dozens of different alien species. Each group wanted to learn about the tactics Hana had used and the philosophy behind her victory. The translator was amazed by how many languages he was learning. Every species had their own way of expressing concepts like mercy and cooperation. Many had never had words for these ideas before. Lim Soman found herself teaching combat techniques to young Nexari warriors who wanted to learn human fighting methods. They were fascinated by the idea of using intelligence instead of just strength. The security chief discovered that many alien species had developed their own clever ways of surviving against stronger enemies. They began sharing knowledge that could help everyone defend themselves better in the ships. Medical Bay Yuna worked alongside alien doctors to understand different types of biology. She learned how to treat injuries and illnesses in species she had never seen before. The alien doctors were equally interested in human medicine. They had never encountered a species that used such simple chemicals to heal complex problems. Earth plants and minerals amazed them. Park Min-ho spent his time in the engine room studying.